Planning and Design. I'm also the Vice Chairman of the DCTMA Board. Welcome you today. I want to thank all of our sponsors today and remind everyone to please visit their tables out in the other room when we finish here and introduce yourselves. I really would appreciate it. Our presenters today for PECO, Federal Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act and EV Infrastructure Installers, that's a mouthful, are Thomas Bonner and Sarah Hagy. Great. Tom serves as Manager, State Government Affairs for PECO with primary responsibility for analyzing the impact of federal, state, and local policy challenges on the company and leading internal teams to develop climate and clean energy policy and business solutions. During his time with PECO, Mr. Bonner has focused on both policies and programs advancing new technologies, including serving as the lead author of PECO's successful $200 million Smart Grid Investment Grant application with the U.S. Department of Energy. Congrats. In addition to representing PECO in numerous state and local stakeholder forums, he currently serves on the board of directors of the Eastern PA Alliance for Clean Transportation. Tom holds a master's of planning degree from the University of Virginia and a BA from the University of Pennsylvania. He lives in Chester Springs, Pennsylvania with his wife Heidi and 3 children. I understand that Tom and Sarah are going to be presenting together today, so I'll introduce Sarah as well. Sarah assumed the role of Executive Director of the Electrical Association of Philadelphia nearly 5 years ago. Before the EAP, Sarah worked for an association management company leading national trade associations representing a variety of industries, including water infrastructure, ice cream vending, horticultural supplies, as well as kitchen exhaust cleaning. Broad range.
Very little things that you can use.
Sarah resides in Philadelphia, where she spent her formative years after moving around the country with her military family. She enjoys giving back to both her community and her profession. Sarah has been a Big Sister for the past 6 years through the Big Brothers Big Sisters program, and currently serves as Vice President of the Mid-Atlantic Society of Association Executives. Please join me in welcoming Tom and Sarah.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Introduce Tom Bonner, Manager, State Government Affairs for PECO. Been with PECO about 15 years. Much of that time been working on, as introduced, clean and advanced technologies. I was telling my colleagues over there, it's been really exciting seeing the development of the electric vehicle industry, really from its modern incarnation, which began probably around 2009. I used to do a lot of work with the City of Philadelphia's person who was designated to work on EV issues in those early days, and it was the Wild West out there. We had a joke between the two of us that somehow every person that walked into the room to talk to us about EVs managed to be shadier than the last person that walked in the room to talk to us about EVs. It was amazing. And then something happened. We at PECO, we sat and we kind of sat back a little bit. We monitored the market. We put out some early incentives so if people bought an EV, they would register them with us so we could track where they were coming on our system. And then around 2016, important changes in the industry happened. When we saw the Chevy Bolt and the Tesla Model 3, we knew the game had changed. That you are now getting vehicles that were going to be able to really become mass market. And we began talking with the automakers, we began talking a lot with equipment manufacturers, and we got the sense around this time this stuff was real. And we have started gearing up more and more people in our organization. We had a kind of a raise your hand volunteer team of EV experts that we built up within the organization that's now had to become more formalized. And we're becoming more formalized by the day of how we manage the increased interest and demand for EVs, which is really exciting to us. We'll say, if you are just an average customer of ours, let me explain why EVs are in your interest. we get probably around $200 of incremental revenue from someone who's an EV driver every year. Now, our rates are pretty simple. You've got the system cost of operating the system, and the more load, the more usage you put on that network, the lower every incremental, the charge for each increment of energy. So it's really in everybody's interest to electrify. The only constraint is we do have to encourage people to not charge at the times of peak usage, which it's a manageable proposition. It's not really a real world challenge for us today. Usage is still so modest that it's not creating any imbalances on the system, but long term we need to work on that. But in general, we say EV adoption puts downward pressure on everyone's electric rates, and that's a great thing for everybody, in addition to the great things it does for the environment. And as an EV driver, I enjoy not paying $4.50 a gallon. I don't know about you, but it's a whole lot cheaper to just plug in at home and charge. But that's not the only thing we're doing. I'm going to walk you through quickly everything we are doing on IIJA, and then we'll focus a little bit more on the specific EV programs. So, just a little primer on IIJA. I know nobody can read this slide. I don't even like this slide, but our consultants developed it. We paid for it, so we've got to use it. You've heard different numbers about how big the IIJA is. What we really look at is the new money, and the new money is somewhere around $550 billion of incremental infrastructure investment over business as usual by the government. That is a lot of money. It's generally divided into two categories: transportation side, and then other, which other's a lot of things. Others, energy infrastructure, water infrastructure, broadband, environmental remediation, you name it. And then a whole bunch of things on transportation that we'll talk about in more depth. About a 50-50 split. How does the money flow? It flows, it starts out, we all pay our taxes. It goes to Congress. Congress has appropriated these dollars. About 2/3 of the money is actually going to be distributed out to the states to distribute. So you heard from PennDOT earlier about the work they're doing on what's called their NEVI plan, the National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Plan. And then about 1/3 of it will go to the federal agencies, where it will be distributed through a competitive grant process. We're interested in both of these things. We hope everybody is looking at opportunities in both of these things. In working with the states, we're trying to make sure that they have program rules, that this money will be useful, that we can put it to work, quickly, and benefit our communities. Let's see, program requirements. I don't care about this slide. Another one, they make me put it in here. Okay, here's the meat of the presentation. Talked about two main categories. Well, for us as PECO, there's two main categories. They're what we call the operational opportunities. This is looking at how we can take advantage of these federal programs to improve our service for our customers. These are things that we can apply for directly, either to the federal government or the states. And in total, it's about $13.5 billion that we're most interested in. There's two programs. One is called Grid Resilience Grants, another is called Grid Resilience Demos. I've been looking at this stuff for 6 months. I cannot tell you exactly what the difference between these two things are. I don't know why they created two separate programs for it, but it's what they did. The Grid Resilience Grants, half of that $5 billion is going to the federal government, where they're going to dole it out by competitive grant processes. The other $2.5 billion goes to the state. It's going to go to the State Department of Environmental Protection. It has what's called an energy office, and they have to develop this whole new program on how they're going to give out the money to encourage greater reliability and resiliency and ability to include clean energy on the grid. That's all going to come under development. I'm not sure they've even gotten their official notice from DOE yet about how much money they're getting. And then there's another $5 billion program that does more or less the exact same thing. All of this money is going to the states. And again, they have to write some program rules and figure out what they're going to do with it. Our experience from that 2009 grant that we talked about earlier is by being strategic about pursuing these opportunities, we have a chance to improve the quality of service to our customers and do it at half off. So we have a really intense, rigorous process undergoing at PECO, looking for not only what would provide benefit to our customers and communities, but what will be competitive in terms of a DOE application or an application to the state where we'd have a good chance of success. One thing I will say, I was involved in the smart grid application in 2009 from beginning to the day we closed the program office up, because I also project managed our customer partnerships. You don't want to go after small grants if you're a big organization like PECO that isn't built to do this stuff. Compliance is really costly and really complicated. You have to set up a separate office that specializes in making sure you don't break any federal laws, which we don't want to do. And so we are not interested in chasing $1 million grants that are going to cost us over a 4 or 5 year program $600,000 to comply with. We're only really looking at the big stuff. But where we have an opportunity to make a big impact on our communities, we're looking at that. Then the second category is partnership opportunities. So the EV programs we started to talk about are in here. Clean school buses, which I'll talk about in a moment, are in here. We're talking with some of our school districts about this program called Energy Efficient Renewable Schools. We are waiting for the states to give us some more direction on a big pot of money they got for weatherization. Weatherization is one of my favorite potential projects, because we've looked at like the housing stock and the small business stock in our region. There is almost a limitless opportunity to weatherize and save money, and especially for the low income, to the extent you can make their energy bills more affordable, that benefits everybody, because we all contribute to helping those customers pay their bills. And then there are programs for public transit. So yes, we are talking with SEPTA. We're hoping they're looking at some things. We're talking with the Port of Philadelphia. There's good money in there for the airport, and there's a really interesting concept called a hydrogen hub. Hydrogen could be used there in like a lot of industrial applications, or maybe long haul trucking, where electric may not get you the energy intensity that you need. Hydrogen may be a substitute for fossil fuels. Pennsylvania has a great source of feedstock in we have excess electric capacity. We also have a lot of natural gas, you may have heard. We in the Philadelphia area are close to market. We have ports. We have the Northeast Corridor and I-95. We have big chemical manufacturers. We even have steel manufacturers. We may have the right mix of assets in our region for one of these hydrogen hubs. So we're working with the state. We're working with the Philadelphia Chamber of Commerce. We're just trying to gather potentially interested stakeholders. If you're thinking to yourself, wow, a lot of people at PECO are working on this and spending a lot of time working on it, you're right, we are. We don't want to let this opportunity pass us by. We want to be able to help bring as many of these federal dollars that we're all paying for back to our community. So, talk about the EV corridors. I know you heard about this earlier from PennDOT. $5 billion national program, the starting kit. Kind of, if anybody here have kids, did you ever get that little wooden train set that you start out with the figure 8, the like Thomas Tank Engine and all that? They're starting off with their figure 8. They have to put stations every 50 miles along the interstates and primary U.S. highway corridors. So in our region, that's I-95, I-76, I-476, and U.S. Highway 30. Those are the currently designated alternative fuel corridors. I don't know, I got here late for the PennDOT presentation. We are hopeful they will add US 202 and 422 in the southeast to that map. They would have to make that designation later this month to DOT. They don't want to make everything an alternative fuel corridor, because that's like anything else. If everything's a priority, nothing's a priority. But we think those two would be particularly high value. These charging stations, you have to have 450 watt kWs, that's DC fast chargers, can charge just about any vehicle in under an hour. They can all operate simultaneously, and they can't be on like somebody's private network, or they can't be single like vehicle manufacturers. So Tesla, the way that system's set up, they can't qualify for this money unless they open up their network to everyone, and that's a business decision Tesla's going to make, whether or not to do that. So under this program, The feds give you 80% of the cost, and then some non-federal party, that could be anybody, has to provide the other 20%. And that's where, we as the utility may or may not be able to help with what we already do, which is when a customer wants to put in an EV charging station, we always have some cost of doing that upgrade, but we also give the customer credit toward future usage. We have worked with PennDOT, talked to others in our industry, saying, well, we're already giving people what we call a revenue credit. That revenue credit should count toward the 20% match requirement. We're expecting some rules out of DOT Friday. We're hoping they say that, because that would help. But then you need to come up with about 20%. The information we've seen at building one of these stations, probably around, it's all location specific, could be anywhere from about $600,000 to $1 million. The feds are paying 80% of that, but somebody needs to come up with the rest. So who is going to do that? It might be what we call site hosts, the Wawas and Sheetz and Royal Farms of the world, who want to drive traffic into their stores. It might be a company like Electrify America, which actually builds, owns, and operates high-speed EV chargers. Challenge here is right now, it is probably not a profitable business. No, right now it is not a profitable business. I've been told by people who are experts, there are maybe 4 street corners in San Francisco where this is a profitable commercial business today. So people are kind of going in on spec. And the amount of people who lay out that kind of money on spec, that's a question. Pennsylvania is getting $171 million under the program. It has to submit its state plan by August 1st. We do know from our friends at PennDOT that they are hoping to get it in earlier to get them to the, higher on the stack of reviews and approvals so they can start spending money. PennDOT's been terrific about soliciting input from stakeholders. I've probably already been on 5 conversations with them about how they can set up their program rules. They're being fantastic about this. It's a huge challenge, along with everything else they're working on with transportation funding. They're looking at what are their cost share options? How do you site them to minimize infrastructure upgrade costs to get them in the right locations where they're safe, they're highway proximate, they're usable? And then, what are the reliability standards they're going to require? So that if somebody drives up to the station, they desperately need a charge, they're almost out of charge, that they don't have an out of order sign there. So PennDOT's working on all of those things. For the Southeast, the biggest issue we see in the immediate is we don't want to get passed by. And I'll show you what getting passed by looks like. If they said, we're just going to put charging stations every 50 miles, along the major corridors, I'm sorry, my slide got shrunk here a little bit. There was going to be one other of these big batteries further up, just a little bit off screen. Build 3 massive chargers 50 miles apart in Southeast PA, you're done. I don't think that would be very good policy because, I think I do have a laser pointer. So much of traffic in our region, as you guys know, comes in here, and here, and here, and here, and here, and here. What I call, this would give you some north-south coverage, but nothing what I would call east-west. It's not a comprehensive network, and you're also not getting any charging access for somebody who might, live and need it here. Well, some of the most heavily trafficked corridors in our region would have really no access under this program. So what we've recommended to PennDOT, DERPC has given the same message, is something that looks more like this. More, probably smaller stations at intervals that pick up these, the east-west travel corridors into town, north-south, fill in the gaps, kind of a radial hub and spokes type approach. When I've spoken with folks at PennDOT, they do say that this is what they're thinking long-term. This isn't going to be the day one plan, because the day one they have to fill in those mandatory spots on the map. That's what the federal law says. They don't have any discretion there. But long-term, they want something that looks like this. We think there are a number of advantages beyond just the coverage. When you're building smaller stations, there's less chance that it's going to require big utility infrastructure upgrades, big costs there. You get that better coverage. You have the ability to, the whole thing with making these economic someday is you're going to need both highway traffic and some local traffic It's all about, we call it utilization level. And to the extent you get them where people might use them on a day-to-day basis, because I wasn't, my schedule got thrown off, the kids were sick, I had to run home to school, and then I had to get the other one to soccer practice. Suddenly you have driven more in that day than you had charged, and you need somewhere to just urgently pop into, say, Wawa for 10 minutes, get yourself a soda, pick up the soft pretzels for the soccer team, and then get 15 minutes of charge, and suddenly you're okay again, and you have enough charge to get home. That's what you need. You need that combination to get your utilization levels up. So we think all of those things argue for this more dispersed hub and spokes radial type of charging network in the Southeast. The second thing, which might be of most interest to you all, is they also have the clean transportation infrastructure. This is more of a community-based program. This isn't all the fast chargers. This can involve what are called level 2 chargers, charge your car about 27, even up to 30 miles of range in an hour. So this is more of what you see if you pull into a Walmart or Costco or a movie theater, where people are putting these chargers just to encourage people to come on in. So if these are competitive grant applications, they can be filed by local governments, by regional planning organizations, community organizations, nonprofits, and others. They are looking with the priorities on they call underserved rural and urban communities, especially those with high percentages of households. I was talking to a couple folks here earlier about that, who live in homes that don't have garages and multi-dwelling unit homes. You can include a mix of charging levels on this, so you could put one fast charger that's there for kind of that emergency situation, and then also a bank of community chargers that people could come over on Friday, come to the farmer's market, charge up the car with all the charge they're going to need for the week, and go on home. And then the program rules on this are likely to come out a little bit later than the NEVI program, so probably in the fourth quarter. So PennDOT doesn't receive a specific allocation under this, but in writing their NEVI plan, they want to make sure that some of the issues they work through will help make our Pennsylvania communities more competitive when we go through and file these competitive applications. So we at PECO, we look forward to working with any community that's interested. Let us know. We not only is it good for that specific community, as we work through these issues, it helps us start creating like a template of solutions that can be replicated in other communities. Zero emission school buses. I left a flyer out on everybody's table. We have a webinar coming up on Friday. We're co-hosting with the DVRPC and the Eastern PA Clean Cities Organization. US EPA will provide a program overview on the school bus program. And then Region 3 will also be on, telling you who their contact information is if you need technical assistance, if you need to talk to somebody at EPA about the program. This is a great, very generous program. It covers 100% of the incremental cost of an electric school bus versus a conventional internal combustion engine diesel school bus, and any infrastructure upgrades that the customer has to make on their property. So it's probably the most generous program in the whole IIJA. Why is it so generous? I'm a parent. The idea of kids not having to sit on the street corner waiting for the bus that pulls up and belches exhaust out into their lungs, I think everyone sees as a high value. School buses are a little more challenging economically because they don't drive as much in a typical day as, say, a transit bus. And with an EV, you're trying to maximize the usage of that battery. That's how you get your economics back. Upfront costs are higher, but you save on fuel and maintenance. So really encourage everybody, if you know somebody that might be interested in this, share the information. If you're interested yourself, please join us. Really excited about this partnership. When we proposed this US EPA, they were really excited, and they said, we are going to reach out and try to get other regions to replicate what you guys are doing. So we're happy to be on the cutting edge here. Last thing I'll talk about before I turn things over to Sarah, we do have the incentive, our level 2 commercial EV charging incentive that just kicked off. It went live April 1st of this year. We have $500,000 that is allocated over 2 years to provide incentives to any commercial customer who's interested in installing EV charging. The rebate amount is the lesser of $2,000 or half of your infrastructure, what we call the make-ready costs. And if you are in what's called a PA Environmental Justice Area, which is a state-designated area, it's more generous. It's $3,000 per charging port with a 75%, and we'll pay up to 75% of the make-ready cost. We do limit this to 20 ports per customer. We want to make sure the benefits can be broadly shared. The funds are limited and subject to availability. I will tell you, we have already received applications for about 3/4 of the dollars that are allocated for year one, and the program just went live April 1st. So there is a lot of interest out there. Can't guarantee that every one of those projects is going to go through, but we do say if you're interested, try to get it to us sooner rather than later, because the funds likely will run out for the year, and then we will have another application period in 2023. So with that, thank you very much for having me. Thanks to the Delco TMA for giving us time to have this presentation. I'll turn things over to Sarah.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to keep this fairly brief. I don't have a presentation. Again, my name's Sarah. I'm with the Electrical Association of Philadelphia. We are a nonprofit trade association here. We're actually representing the Greater Delaware Valley. And we were formed in 1917. In fact, we're part of a group of independent electrical associations and leagues around North America that were founded in the early 1900s by our utility. And of course, at that time, we were bringing any and everything that plugged in, so to speak, to market with PECO in this region. And so it's really exciting to be here today, 100+ years later, to be talking about electrification in the region. And so it's a pleasure to be here. And our membership is, first off, forgive me on the name, it's a little bit misleading, because our membership is actually very diverse, both in what they do, but also where they do it. So our membership does span 5-county region, Philadelphia area, and beyond. We have electrical contractors, lighting, renewable energy, heating and air contractors, of course. But in addition, we also represent engineers, inspectors, manufacturers, their representatives, wholesalers that bring those products to the various projects going around in the region. And so we are here, frankly, to be a resource to all of you as you go through your planning process for your EV charging networks. And on the table, I did pass out just a little bit of information about the organization. On the other side, you can decide you can learn more about us. It's a brand new strategy that we rolled out, actually based on some of the scenarios that DVRPC put out a little while ago. So how can I help you all specifically? Well, we're here to help you find installers to do the work. We're a third-party entity that will allow you to find installers to meet your needs. We're actually in the process right now. We're going to be talking with Sean and building a custom referral, online custom referral network, for you all specifically based on zip code and level 1, 2, 3 charging needs, whatever it is that you need. We actually already have a system in place. We do it for the residential market as well. So it's just another value add that we can bring here, and actually as a result of a conversation with Tracy at your TMA. So why do you want to work with our members, right? There's a lot of electrical contractors out there. Well, there's a couple of reasons. Number one, much like you, they voluntarily belong to their trade association within the region. They now have access to education and as well as their colleagues in order to make sure they're doing things the right way, compliantly, and of course, safely. Yesterday, in fact, we had an EV charging system webinar where for 2 hours we had an electrical inspector. All of our courses are taught by electrical inspectors. That way we make sure the installers are getting the accurate information so those jobs pass inspection. But again, not only are they learning technical information, they're learning really practical information, because you've got people from, their boots on the ground there sharing and conversing with one another. Of course, we make sure that these contractors are insured. I'm sure that's probably part of your process as well. And finally, I would say that, well, not finally, we want to keep the jobs in the region. So working with one of our members is going to keep those dollars that Tom was talking about back in our community here. It's really important to keep those jobs here, and our contractors ready, eager, and willing to help you out. So I'm here to be a resource to you all. My staff is available. If you have any questions, you can call the office. And we'll be looking forward to working with both the TMA as well as DVRPC to
Any questions here?
I do
Yes.
I do have a question. Back to the school bus program.
Yes.
And you gave examples of who is eligible for this.
Yes.
And one says private bus operators on school bus programs.
Yes.
If they cover, and I'm just blue skying this, let's say they cover either public or private universities, is that applicable? Or is this just K to 12?
I believe the program is exclusively K to 12.
Okay.
And I will double check that and get
Okay.
back to you. Tracy, so it's like 97%
Okay,
certainty it's all K to 12.
Just curious.
Yeah, it can be a private bus operator, but they have to have like a standing contract with a school
district.
Yes.
Got it.
So, and I know we have a lot of those in our region.
Yes.
Yep.
Tom, I have a question. The PECO does have off-peak rate program.
Yes.
Off-peak, heating and air conditioning, stuff like that. Is that something we consider putting back in to charge residential EV cars and not?
So we have a time of use program that we just initiated last year. I think we're about 9 months old or so with that. It's real new. There was a strangeness at the Pennsylvania Public Utility Commission where the law said we had to offer a time of use program. And one of our commissioners did not want us to offer a time of use program. The commissioners moved on to other responsibilities, and now the commission has us do what the law said we were supposed to do, which was offer a time of use program. It is what we call a whole home time of use. So it is not tied specifically to the EV. So, like for example, I have been working at home for almost 2 years, like many of us. Going back into the office part of the time now. I am an EV driver. My wife is an EV driver. When we are both working outside of the home, we're going to jump on that time of use rate. Right now, I'm still at home about 3 days a week. I'm not sure. We have to kind of figure out if it works for us. But yes, that is available, and you can sign up. And I don't have the information on the slide, but if you want to follow up with me on HB,
So you have a timetable?
it's I wish Nick were here. Nick, stop! My colleague Nick Martin stepped down. I believe it's from midnight to 6 a.m. It's a super off-peak rate, and then I believe it's a lower rate, a less lucrative but a lower rate from, I believe it's 8 p.m. to midnight. And I'll have to double check all that. It's all on the website, as you know. But yeah, it's somewhat new. I think uptake has been a little bit less than we would hope in the ideal world, and I think it is as we're still transitioning out of the pandemic. A lot of people are still working at home and don't feel like they can, kind of take the chance of going on when it's time to use. And me, if I'm working at home, my wife's off at her job now outside of the home, and we need laundry now. So home parents, we need laundry. But once I go back full time to PECO, I don't have to worry about that. We'll get on with that. So we have that. I think we're looking real broadly at the whole idea of time of use rates. And as you get more and more usage on the system, that becomes more important. I was talking with Sarah actually earlier. We have not reached the same levels of electric usage that we had back in 2007 before the Great Recession. We've not reached those levels again yet. So we do have excess capacity on the system. So we have some flexibility. We can add a lot of EVs onto our system without creating system-wide issues. We are looking at, and we monitor, the reason we have that little incentive is to monitor where people are buying EVs, so we can have some early warning where we might have localized capacity challenges. And I think that's going to be the first thing. The other thing is for buses, for fleets, where they operate on real strict schedules and they be drawing a lot of energy at the time they're charging, that's probably going to be the next thing we look at, is some type of structured rate that rewards them for not charging at peak hours. And For there, the risk is, if you don't do that, they might not electrify, and we want everybody to electrify. If it moves, we want to electrify it. That's my motto. Yes?
I know in New Jersey that they've developed a statewide EV ordinance for a lot of the municipalities. But what's the status in Pennsylvania?
It's a great question. PennDOT actually is paying for a study that Temple University is doing to look at what a model ordinance would look like, what the considerations that municipalities should be beginning to put in place. Actually, it was on the list of the people that the research team from Temple talked to. I think that's expected out later this year. DVRPC also years ago, and it's probably back to about 2015, 2016, did a thing called the Ready to Roll plan that had some discussion of these issues. I have to admit, I haven't opened my copy of Ready to Roll recently, but I was part of the team that worked on that. So they've at least started looking at it, and we can get that to you as a resource. I kind of thought that this wasn't going to be a big issue, but I was talking to some folks recently, and they said, yeah, for municipalities, there are a lot of questions, a lot of things that we are going to have to work out. Folks from media, and it was at Rutledge was the other one, right? Yes. I was talking to earlier. We are talking to one other municipality about it's a pretty exciting project. They were interested in hanging chargers on utility poles. There are a variety of reasons that could be challenging. We'd have to look at what are the reliability implications of that. What are the emergency response implications? What are the liability implications? We always know. And then what precedent that sets for other people who want to hang things on our poles. We said we're not necessarily saying no, but as an alternative, maybe if you put the chargers, what we're calling pole adjacent rather than pole attached, it wouldn't raise any of these issues. We could do it all under our existing processes. So what we said is to this borough, if you can locate your chargers within 7 feet of one of our utility poles, we won't charge you anything for running the secondary to the charger. It will be a metered service. We are hopeful that as we work through, the dotting the I's and crossing the T's, that this ends up being as simple as we think it is. And it's something we can just do under all of our existing business processes. If that all works out, we'll be communicating that to all of our municipalities.
Tom, as a follow-up,
Yes.
do you have a time frame on that Temple study?
I believe it's supposed to be later this summer, but
Okay.
I heard it's
don't
before the
recall.
end of the year.
Yeah.
We're hoping to have that Temple team present at next year's municipalities conference,
Great.
so.
But this is really exciting. Like I said, I'm an EV owner. I'm an enthusiast. I believe it's the future. If you've never driven an EV, encourage you to do it. I personally believe once you've driven electric, you really do not want to go back. I had a thing where I hit an enormous pothole. Anybody here? Yeah, you're on the board of the TMACC for Chester County. We can talk about the pothole I hit on Ridge Road. That blew out. I am too, so I'm joking. And I had to drive a conventional vehicle for like 10 days. My car was getting fixed. Not happy about that, but we do think this is the future. And I joke, I'm a government affairs guy by training. I'd like to say that everything comes out of my mouth should be both true and in my self-interest if I'm doing my job right. I believe the future is EV is true. And it's not just because it's in our interest as PECO. They're cleaner, they're more reliable, they're cheaper to maintain. They are, I was talking to somebody the other day about police vehicles being EV. And they're saying, oh, our policemen are really, they're not sure they'll work. It's like, I don't know, it seems to me if you're a cop, I want something that's quiet and I want something that's quick. That's an EV. I don't know. So yeah, we're really excited about this. Thanks for having us.
I just have
one more.
One last,
Okay.
maybe for Sarah, I didn't know. How have you seen the price of the EV stations in
infrastructure and installation change over the past couple of years? And a follow-up, do you see a large difference between new installations versus a retrofit type of situation?
I can't personally speak to that since I'm not an electrician. Boy, you have listening to my crap. Did you, and I don't know if you can speak to the pricing in terms of EV installation, has it changed, has it come down?
Nothing's going down.
Yeah, that's what I thought it might, you know, as you install more, you would think it would come down, but now I know the price of
Well,
things
I
has
mean, the prices
increased.
of the commodities are going up. So,
Right.
Every situation is a little different,
Mhm.
especially in the private sector.
Right.
Because you gotta come out of the building, you know, how far is the parking lot away from the building with a power source?
Mhm.
We just got one completed that was maybe like a $6,000 install cost. You know, so it all varies.
Okay. So I didn't know if you saw a large increase because of, you know, the commodities change, but it sounds like it's kind of leveled out.
Personally, can speak to it, I can find out, because I know people that
Yeah. What I hear from friends at State DEP is there are also grants available, I should have mentioned earlier, through the Volkswagen settlement, and we're starting to come to the end of that funding, but they have programs under the Volkswagen settlement program called the Driving PA Forward that you can get grants today. They'll cover about 60% of the cost of a public charger, and then you get a lower match if you're doing something that is like workplace restricted, but it's still, I think, over 50% of those costs. And then they also just do a reimbursement program for level 2 chargers. I think their range on the DC fast chargers, you have to have at least 2 to get the the DEP grant. They've been seeing between like 600,000 up to about 800,000 for those projects. For the level 2 chargers, it's like 8 to 12,000. Most of the projects coming at, and that's ballpark. It's all going to be, as we said over here, it's very location specific. The less ground you have to break, the less concrete you disturb, the shorter the line run, the cheaper the project.
Thank you very much, Tom and Sarah, for everything. Everyone know, feel free, the lunch will be back out to the lobby in the room that's all the way over to the right. Again, please stay, enjoy, network with your colleagues, and thank you very much for joining us today at our annual municipalities conference. Please keep your ear to the ground for next year's conference. A little bit of a different format. We're opening it up to a little bit of a wider audience, some different types of education, but I think everyone's going to be really pleased. So thanks again for coming.